Kentucky, Yorktown, and Virgil Earp are all on this day. Welcome back to On This Day. Today's date is October 19th, 2022. It is the 292nd day of the year. We got 73 days left in 2022. It is the 42nd Wednesday in the 42nd week and the 28th day of fall. You got 63 days left until winter. I think this week we're finally getting our first real rain here in Portland, Oregon. It is unseasonably dry. I think since, May, we've had 4 days of rain, which is totally weird. Today is National Kentucky Day. On October 19th, National Kentucky Day recognizes the 15th state to be granted statehood. The Bluegrass State became the first to enter the Union west of the Appalachian Mountains. This is home to the Kentucky Derby, Fort Knox, and the birthplace of the nation's most beloved president, Abraham Lincoln. Well, at least one of the most beloved, depends on who you are, I guess. Every so often, I like to look at historians. They always come out with who are the best presidents, who are the worst presidents. They always rank them. He is always in the top 3. Daniel Boone blazed trails through Kentucky, and several state parks and sites bear his name. Kentucky's an interesting state. All right, let's see what else October 19th has given us. 1781, the American Revolutionary War. The siege of Yorktown comes to an end. We just talked about this one the other day, or it probably would be the deep dive. Been a while, but we talked about it when the siege started. Very interesting story in American history. If it wasn't for the French, it probably wouldn't have turned out the way it did. A majority of the forces were American forces, but even when the British were defeated and had to leave Yorktown under surrender, they refused to acknowledge the Americans, kind of looking at them as these are subjects of the crown and we're not going to give them any respect. So when they surrendered, they tried to surrender to the French, and the French commander gestured for them to go surrender to the Americans, which I'm sure bothered the hell out of the British. 1789, John Jay is sworn in as the Chief Justice of the United States. 1864, the American Civil War. The Battle of Cedar Creek ends the last Confederate threat to Washington, D.C. 1950, China defeats the Tibetan Army. This wasn't hard to do. The Tibetan Army was very, very small. There's reports that it was like 3% the size of the Chinese army, but the actual forces that attacked each other, it was kind of like 10-1, and the Tibetan Army was using World War I era weapons. 1973, President Richard Nixon rejects an appeals court decision that he turn over the Watergate tapes. The Nixon White House tapes are audio recordings of conversations between U.S. President Richard Nixon and Nixon administration officials, Nixon family members, and White House staff recorded between 1971 and 1993. Now, this became a major part of the Watergate scandal because a lot of the planning and a lot of the connections between the Watergate burglars, I guess you could say, and the White House, there was information on these tapes about that. A lot of people assume that this recording system was placed by the CIA or someone that was working against Nixon. That's not the case at all. Just prior to assuming office in January of 1969, President Nixon learned that his predecessor, Lyndon B. Johnson, had installed a system to record meetings and telephone calls. According to the Chief of Staff, H.R. Haldeman, Nixon ordered the system to be removed, but during the first 2 years of his presidency, he came to the conclusion that the audio recordings were the only way to ensure a full and faithful account of conversations and decisions. At Nixon's request, Haldeman and his staff, including Deputy Assistant Alexander Butterfield, worked with the United States Secret Service to install a recording system. I'm sure at the time he had no intentions of doing anything illegal or saying anything illegal, so it seemed like a good idea. These were sound-activated recording devices, so anytime someone came into the office, it started recording. On February 16, 1971, a taping system was installed in 2 rooms in the White House, the Oval Office and the Cabinet Room. 3 months later, microphones were added to President Nixon's private office in the old Executive Building, and the following year, microphones were installed in the Presidential Lodge at Camp David. This also included later on, they would start recording all the phone calls that came in and out of the White House. Now, this seems like common sense now, and it's probably something that is very out in the open, but at the time, this was kind of, I wouldn't say cutting edge technology, but it was new. Well, the whole thing is when the Watergate scandal broke and they started investigating and have the Watergate hearings, they learned about these tapes and they wanted them. Well, Nixon didn't want to give them up. And when he did finally have to give them up, a lot of the recordings were missing. According to President Nixon's secretary, Rosemary Woods, on September 29, 1973, she was reviewing a tape of the June 20th, 1972 recordings when she made a terrible mistake during the transcription. While playing the tape, she actually erased some of it or recorded over it. Most people believe this was done intentional and she was basically the fall guy or whatever. Now, there was a pedal device for recording things and it was really strange, and so they had her demonstrate how she did it, and that was kind of the first indication that this was total BS. So while demonstrating it, she had to press the record pedal, which was a foot-activated thing, and then she had to lean over her shoulder to answer a telephone, and the whole time applying pressure to this pedal, which any normal person would have just rotated the chair around to pick up the phone and leave their foot off the pedal. But for some reason, she kept her foot on the pedal, did this weird stretching thing, and it became known as Rosemary's Stretch. 1987, Black Monday, the Dow Jones Industrial Average falls by 22%, or 508 points. That was a lot back then. Movies released on October 19th, 2001, Riding in Cars with Boys. This was a really good movie. An intelligent but naive young girl named Beverly has her whole life ahead of her, including a potential career that involved writing literature. Unfortunately for her, however, her plans are derailed after having a child as a teenager, causing her to shift her focus from herself to her newborn son. This starred Drew Barrymore, and I think it's one of her best movies. What's interesting is during the film, Drew Barrymore played the role of Adam Garcia's mother. However, she is actually 2 years younger than him in real life. That one, it's a really good movie. If you ever get a chance, watch that movie. I say that about a lot of movies, but just think how many thousands of movies I don't say it about. Born on October 19th, 1966, Jon Favreau, American actor and director who rose to stardom with the lead role alongside Vince Vaughn in the 1996 movie Swingers, which was a pretty good movie. And that's what I knew him as. And then all of a sudden he was an Elf, Iron Man, Lion King. He portrays Happy Hogan in all the Marvel movies. He's directed a bunch of them too. He had a bit part in the 1992 movie Hoffa and became a big part of the movie Rudy. If you've ever seen the movie Rudy, the story of Rudy, it's pretty amazing. Died on October 19th, 1905, Virgil Earp, Deputy U.S. Marshal and Civil War veteran who presided over the famous gunfight at the OK Corral. He served in the Union Army from 1862 to 1865. He was ambushed on the streets of Tombstone following the OK Corral shootout. He was not killed, but his left arm was permanently damaged. He is one of the older brothers to Wyatt Earp. He was played by Sam Elliott in the movie Tombstone. Virgil and his wife Allie moved to Goldfield, Nevada. And in February of 1905, he caught pneumonia. His brother Wyatt was living in Goldfield, went to visit him, and he was slowly getting better and actually attended some meetings that he had planned. Earp's recovery from pneumonia didn't last, or he caught it again, something like that. But in early October of 1905, he went down with it again. In October 19th, 1905, Earp died at St. Mary's Hospital in Goldfield. Now, here's a strange twist. At the request of his daughter, Nellie, Allie sent his body to Portland, Oregon, where he is buried at the Riverview Cemetery. I didn't know that till I just started reading that. It's strange. All right, that's today's video. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you got some information out of it. Now go out, have a productive day, and be nice to each other.